Are you struggling to color grade your photos and turn them into standout pieces for your portfolio? Well, there's one trick that I started using that made the color grading process both fun and easy. That one trick is what I like to call the one color rule. That's when you choose one color to rule your entire scene. Now, when I say that that color is going to rule the scene, I'm meaning that that is going to determine where you're going to push the rest of your colors in your photo. Now, it might still sound a little bit confusing, so I don't think that there's any better way to illustrate this than in Lightroom itself, so let's jump into Lightroom. Okay, so I think that this photo is going to be a great start for us. We've got a lot of different colors going on. It's an outdoor scene, so we need to figure out what color that we want to choose to be our dominant color. So the way that I'm mainly starting out thinking about the process of choosing a dominant color is mainly going to be based off of how it directs attention to my subject. And I believe that's what makes a great photo, when a viewer knows where to look when they see your photo without getting distracted. So our objective is to choose a color that our subject is either wearing, or maybe their skin tone, whatever is going to work best for your environment, and then we'll build from there. So let's get started. So one of the colors that we could choose, we could go with the skin tone. We could go with these pinks, purples. We could go with those if we wanted to. Personally, I think that just to make this very easy, just for like an overall, if you don't have extra colors like pinks or reds or these purples, then I want to make it very easy, and we're going to go with the skin tones. So this is going to be my dominant color. Now, as of where this sits so far, I have all my basics done. And so all I've really created in the tone curve is just some contrast. And so now we come to the part where we start really shaping the colors in our image. And the color mixer tab is where we do, I would say, like 80 to 90% of our color grade. And then the color grading tab is just kind of where we enhance that. So let's start getting into this photo here. So like I said, we're going to choose the skin tone as our main color. So what I'm going to do, just to make this very, very easy, if you're starting out and you're frustrated, maybe you're just not really sure how to get this process going, a great way is to select the color and then desaturate every other color. So for me, it'd be like yellow, it'd be green, blue. I'm just going to bring down all these colors just so that we can see what's going on with our skin tones. Okay, so now that we have our main color fully separated from the rest of the colors and it's easy to see, my next thought process is going into what kind of color scheme I want to choose. So for me personally, a really easy one and a really fast one is creating a complementary color scheme. Now let's go into our color grading tab here and let's look at a color wheel. So the skin tones are sitting somewhere in here in like this yellowy orange tone. Now a complementary color scheme is when there's a color opposite on the color spectrum. So that would be something like these blues, which are right in here. And where are we going to pull in those blues? They're mainly going to be coming from the sky. So for me personally, a lot of the color schemes that I'm creating, because I'm shooting a lot outdoors, is going to be this style of complementary color scheme where I have these orange skin tones and then I have this blue complementing sky. So okay, let's start bringing back the color that helps to complement this tone. So let's go back into our color mixer here, and then we'll start pushing back our blue because that's complementary, right? So we're going to push back in our blue, reset that. And then what else helps to maybe complement the sky? Probably our aquas, maybe some of our aquas here, and then maybe some of our purples. Okay, yeah, our purples are affecting a bit of the mountains in the background. Okay, perfect. Now from this point, we need to make sure that the color that is actually complementing actually matches on the color spectrum. So first, we want to make sure, are these skin tones where we want them to sit? Now the lips, for sure, they don't have red because we extracted our red. So let's even bring back some of our reds, because that's going to help with the overall skin tone. I'm just giving you a great visual. I don't usually do this because I'm so used to it, but if you're new to this, this is a great process. So now going back to our blues, we need to figure out, does this blue complement our skin tones based off of where it sits on the color spectrum? And when we look at a color wheel here, I would say no. That is sitting more within these deep blues, even into the purple. And one way that you can even kind of figure that out is by even pushing in a little bit of this tone here. And just by pushing that in, we can see that this overall tone that I'm pushing in matches the background. And if we were to push over this way, we can see that no, this doesn't actually match that once we start bringing down. No, it's more into the deep blue, into the purple, somewhere in this range here. And so that's a really easy hack to figure out exactly what color it is. So we want to start getting into a range like here. So just going to pull out that color, go to the color mixer tab. Now let's start pushing our hue for the blue a little bit more teal. Okay, now that's starting to match a lot better. Now I'm going to go to the aqua, just see what that's affecting. Okay, so I'm going to leave it even just a little bit more on the aqua side. Let's check the purple here. Okay, so the purple is affecting the outfit a little bit. So we don't want to go too much on the purple because we don't want to affect the entire outfit, but we'll just sway a little bit towards that blue. Okay, perfect. So this blue tone, which is in the mountains here, is matching those skin tones much better. Now I'm happy with these skin tones. If you want to push those skin tones a little bit more red, then that would mean you'd have to go even more teal with the sky. So it's just matching and pairing where those colors sit on the color spectrum. Okay, so from this point, now maybe I could bring back some of my yellows. And now these yellows are actually going to kind of break up the color grade. Now, when I'm thinking about where I want extra colors to be like my yellows, I'm usually thinking, okay, this color has to fit within the complementary color scheme. So it either has to push more toward that orange tone, or if I'm going to keep it kind of that true grass, then it needs to sit more so within a complementary color scheme. Now, when I'm thinking about a complementary color scheme, that's when I have one color, which let's say, for example, that's our skin tones up in this area, and then I have the opposite, but then I also have another one which is in close proximity to that color. So that would be something like our greens or yellows. So as of where it kind of sits right now, it almost is a split complementary. Now, a split complementary is basically creating a small triangle that would look like something up in here, coming down to this blue, over to the skin tone. So it's like this little triangle that we've got going on. Okay, so now this tone of the grass doesn't match up in here. Maybe we could go a little bit more green if we wanted to create more split complementary. So let's even just push that yellow a little bit more towards that green. Okay, so now that matches better with the blue, skin tones, and now the grass. So it's very intentional where I'm pushing my colors based off of what already works. All of these color schemes have already been proven to work, so I'm not just gonna try and reinvent the wheel. This has thought to it. All right, now let's say that we want to take these yellows, maybe push them a little bit more towards those skin tones. What that's going to do is give us more of that complementary color scheme. So this yellow tone is actually going to be pushing to be more like the skin tones. Now, it doesn't have to be identical, but it does have to be leaning towards that way because what that's going to do is just help enhance those skin tones. So now this image is starting to look more like a two color scheme image, which is exactly what we want. So now from this point, what we're going to do is we can start adjusting the saturation and the luminance of maybe like our blues, our pinks, our magentas, our purples, those kinds of different colors. So we could bring back these magentas here, bring back into that suit. We could even bring back some of our greens. I want my greens fairly muted just because whatever is not going to bring attention to my subject, I'm usually going to mute those tones. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to completely get rid of them in terms of saturation, but it will mean sometimes that I will desaturate a bit and then I'll lower the luminance to actually draw less attention away because our eyes are most attracted to the brighter parts of a photo and the most saturated parts. So if our greens in the background are more saturated and brighter, then it's going to draw attention away from the subject. And that's not what I want to do. So I want to keep all the attention, all the focus to the subject. Now, in terms of keeping a lot of these colors, I know some people struggle to know, okay, do I keep my colors and whatnot? Personally, like I said, it's drawing attention to the subject. Maybe what I would do is just make sure that these blues, which are in the subject's pants, even in like the helmet, match more of the background. So maybe if the shot was maybe for like Simpson helmets or was for these overalls, then probably we want to make sure that we keep the colors as natural as possible to what was true to life. So then what I'm going to do is actually adjust the rest of my image to fit that. So it kind of depends on who you're shooting for and what you're shooting for to determine what colors you're going to emphasize. Now, I wasn't specifically shooting for any of these brands. I was just shooting for this athlete. So what I'm going to do is basically just keep the skin tones. Now, what I could do to draw less attention maybe to the magentas, to the pinks, it does help draw attention to the subject, but we want the face. We want the face to be the subject here. So what I'm going to do is just lower a bit of saturation, like I said, and then start lowering the luminance a little bit. Lower the luminance in the purple. And then let's try lowering the luminance in the blue. Okay, now this is giving us more of a moody sky. Now, like I said, we don't want to add too much saturation because once we start lowering the luminance of a color, it starts to enhance the saturation. So we're going to lower the saturation a little bit in those blues, just so that the subject still is the main focus point. Okay, so now where this stands, I'm personally pretty happy with that. I think this looks really cool. If you wanted to, maybe you could add a little bit more blue back into the image, but personally, I like it. Now let's go into color grading. Hey, just wanted to interrupt the video quick to let you know that if you are looking to level up your portfolio and take your images to the next level so that you can start charging more for your work, I want to invite you to check out the solution that I've made just for you called Color Grade Like a Pro. If you want more information on that, you can check it out in the description below. All right, let's get back into the video. So basically, we've set up our image here in the Color Mixer tab, and like I said, this image is going to be 80 to 90% done before we get into color grading. And my personal rule is you should have your shot done, completely done, where it could go to a client, it could go in your portfolio before you even jump into color grading. That's just kind of a rule I set for myself because I believe that color grading basically just enhances what you're already doing. It doesn't really change a whole lot. For sure, it can change the mood and the feeling, but the photo still should be good enough. The color grading shouldn't affect it that much. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in and I'm going to adjust the highlights. Now, usually how I like to work is I will go highlights, midtones, shadows. And I like to split my color wheel in half. So if I want my image warm, I'm gonna go to the right. And if I want my image looking colder, I'm gonna go to the left. So for this shot, I want it looking warm and I'm gonna bring in those natural tones. So now where this trips a lot of people up is where we start bringing in this tone and maybe it's a little bit more red. And they're saying, okay, this color just isn't really fitting the vibe. I don't really know what's going on. Well, one way that you can know how to fix this is by pushing to one extreme, which is like over here, going to the other extreme, which is like up in here. And you're like, okay, from this point to this point, I'm just going to balance and find the middle point that works for this shot. So I'm just going to push down until it clicks with my image. Now, where it's usually going to click is going to match the color scheme. So when we're talking about the color scheme, that's going to be fitting in with the skin tones, and it's also going to fit in with these blues. It's not going to be completely contrasting each of these colors, which is really cool. And that's why I said we're setting up our shot before we get into color grading. All right, and so I feel like now from this point, we could push up our color because it's the right color, or we could dial it back if we want. We can keep it pretty minimal. So then usually with the midtones, I'm pushing the same way as the highlights just to emphasize the highlight. And so I'm just going to push up into that tone, maybe move it a little bit to the right just for some of those skin tones. Okay. And now for the shadows, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push opposite on the color spectrum. Now what that does is it actually helps to balance out my deepest shadows and my blacks. And the reason why you want to do that is because if we come into our image here, if we turn off our color grading layer, turn that off and on, this black is actually being polluted by the highlights and the midtones. So we need to make sure that that is balanced out. Personally, I feel like that is what makes a great looking shot is when your blacks are balanced out. So now what we're going to do is we are going to push in the opposite tone here, somewhere down in here. Now we're going to come into our image somewhere that's like pretty dark. We know is true black, somewhere in the sweater. So I'm just going to push in a little bit here. Now, when it comes to the shadows, we're not going to be pushing it a lot, just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to turn this eye off and on, come out, turn the eye off and on. Now, maybe it is pushing in a little bit because like we don't want to tint the blacks with some blue. We just want them to be true black. So we're just going to lower it just a hair, maybe even like to 4 or even 3. Yeah, I feel like this is a great place. And, you know, we could even go further because our image is balanced. Now, I wouldn't go too far in the midtones. The midtones is one of those where I usually try and keep below the highlight saturation, just because once we start pushing in our midtones a little bit too far, it starts to get things a little bit wacky. So I usually like to keep it very subtle with the midtones. All right, and just like that, we've got a great looking image just based off of this one color rule. So just by starting with one color, we can build out our photo and then we can start color grading. And it was just so simple. We break it down step by step, starting with the color mixer tab, and then we go into the color grading. If you like this video, let me know what resonated with you in the comments below. And if you want to see more videos like this, then I think you'll like this video. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.